Hi, and welcome to Inside South Florida. I'm Dave Azer. On today's show, after the tragedy in Connecticut, how do we keep our children and our schools safe? We asked Broward County Sheriff Al Lamberti. Plus, a presidential historian drops by to give us the scoop on some presidential mistresses and affairs. And a local cardiologist gives you some great advice on how to keep your heart feeling good into the new year. That and more as Inside South Florida starts now. The tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut has caused parents, teachers, and lawmakers to think about how to better protect children. Joining me is Broward County Sheriff Al Lamberti with his thoughts on gun control and how to keep schools safer. Sheriff, I know it's a very, very busy time for you, so I really appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure, Dave. It's good to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Let's start with this. When you personally first heard about what happened in Connecticut, what was your reaction?
Well, first reaction was, oh no, not again, because just the week before we had the mall in Oregon, and then right before that was the Batman shooting in Colorado. It really started back with Columbine, of course, and here's another tragedy in the long line of tragedies that, what are we going to do about these?
Okay, well that's my next question. What are we going to do about these? Starting with the school system, I've heard everything over the past couple of weeks, as I'm sure you've had, from arming principals and teachers to metal detectors. What are some of the ways that we can make schools safer for kids?
Well, you're never going to make a school 100% safe. If you did, it would be a fortress. And I don't think that's the environment we want for our kids. Right away the debate turned to the gun control issue. I don't think this is a gun control problem. It's a mental health system problem. The system is breaking down. It doesn't do enough to recognize and treat people with emotional disorders and personality disorders. So that's what this is about. Adam Lanza didn't wake up that morning and say, I'm going to go shoot up a school. This has been building. And so without some kind of identification and treatment and recognizing the problem, we're bound to have another one. Nationally, we have to put our heads together and react before the next incident occurs.
Right, and Democrats, Republicans, it doesn't matter anymore.
We all want our kids safe.
Right.
This is, again, not a political issue. As I say, most of law enforcement is. Nobody wants to become a victim of crime, and these are not partisan issues. These are safety issues.
Are you surprised at all that the NRA has kind of shut down and disappeared a little bit over the past week or so?
Well, I'm not surprised, but it's one of those things. It's hard to justify some of the weapons that are out there, but I know the Second Amendment debate has been around for decades. And all the surveys I've seen, the country is evenly split over the Second Amendment issues, the right to bear arms. But some of these weapons, I could tell you, when I started here 35 years ago, I carried a 6-shot revolver. Now I carry an automatic with 15 rounds and 30 extra rounds. It's escalated, and we've done that to keep up with the criminals. So we've had to arm our officers in order to keep up and not be outgunned. To the point now, we're issuing assault rifles to our deputies so that they have it in their car. If they come up against one, they can be at least return the same firepower.
I mean, that's such a scary thing to hear, that it's just going to keep escalating and everyone's going to be equipped with these bigger, more powerful weapons to keep up with the bad guys, if you will, which leads me to this. We did have an assault weapons ban in this country up until 2004. Should that come back?
Well, and that's why this is a debate that we have to have. However, keep in mind, there's already 300 million firearms out in our communities in the hands of residents. So if we go after some kind of gun control, what do we do about that? Secondly, a startling statistic. There are over 200,000 firearms reported stolen every year. Stolen from homes, from cars, from businesses. We had a pawn shop broken into here in Broward County. They stole 48 firearms. We recovered about half of them, but the other half are still out there. If a criminal wants a firearm, if he can't buy it, he's going to steal it.
So when you hear things like that, I mean, it's kind of depressing. I mean, it's daunting. This is such a big issue. I want to return quickly back to schools because a lot of our viewers are parents and they have kids in schools, and I understand the problem is bigger than just school safety. But what specifically can we do to make schools a little safer, to give these parents a little more comfort?
Well, like in Connecticut, they did the lockdown at 9 o'clock when everybody's in school. They locked the school down. That's a great thing. They have an electronic buzzer. Unfortunately, he broke the glass and got around that. From everything I've heard, the school and the police there did everything they possibly could do. I'm a firm believer in school resource officers and deputies in every single school. You know, when you and I grew up, it was a luxury. Today, it's almost a necessity. Everybody agrees that we should have them. What we can't agree on is how to pay for them. And again, we can't compromise safety. So I think having that school resource officer, that marked car in front of the school, is a deterrent. And when somebody comes in, they want to commit a crime, they see that marked presence, they'll turn around and maybe go to another school.
Is that enough? Are you in favor personally of metal detectors in schools? Are you in favor of arming principals and some teachers in schools?
Well, you know, think about that. Is that the environment that we want our kids to be in? I mean, you could do a lot of things and make the school 100% secure by doing some of those things. I'm not too sure that's where we want our kids to be educated, in that kind of environment. I don't think that's good for the children to begin with. Every one of these mass murder shootings ended up in a suicide. The gunman ended up killing himself. You know, everybody asks, well, why doesn't he just kill himself to begin with and spare the innocents? But the fact that they all ended up in a suicide demonstrates that this is more of a mental health issue than it is a gun control issue.
So to that point, do you think there should be stricter regulations when purchasing a gun regarding mental health, like a mental health background check or something like that?
That has been talked about. In fact, on the federal form, you have to declare, unfortunately it's self-reporting, if you've had a mental illness. Obviously, you know, that's the honor system. But it's been talked about that, yes, you have to have a mental health background. I'm not too sure how far that would get. That's been talked about. But again, that's where I think most of the problem is. The system is broken down.
Right, and as we conclude this interview and as we say goodbye, it is not a simple problem or a simple solution, but is there one piece of advice or information you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Well, it is multifaceted. We have to get everybody engaged, because otherwise, you know, it's going to happen again. If it happened in Connecticut, in a suburb area, it can happen here. And I think it's just not a matter of if it happens again, when. So we have to react now before the next one occurs.
Well, listen, best of luck with everything you're doing. I know this, like I said, a tough time for you, and we're all grateful that that you're on board, and continued thanks.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a pleasure. You're welcome.
When we come back, we're talking presidential affairs, not business affairs, the juicier ones. You might even call them scandals. That's coming up when Inside South Florida returns.